We're calling the meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock. First thing is our flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bollenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Chandler. Here. Ms. Compatello.
Here.
Mr. Hof.
Here.
Ms. Pokalnik.
Here.
Mr. Oliverio.
Here.
Mr. Radilla. Here. Solicitor Corbel. Here. Engineer Keenan. Here. Mayor Perry. Here. And myself. We have a quorum.
Okay. All right, the first item is our consent agenda, and we're looking at on the OneDrive where the council meeting minutes from October 24th, in addition to our bill list from November 14th. So looking for a motion to approve the November 14th, 2024 consent agenda, pending bill list approval by the Borough President, Manager, and Treasurer. Ms. Wallenbacher?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Ho? Any questions or comments? Yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Public comments on agenda items. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. The solicitor is the assigned timekeeper. Please state your name and physical address for the record. Do we have any signatures? We'll do anybody here first, then we'll go to Zoom. Okay. Yeah. Oh. So we do have one person who we're going to allow her to speak on the agenda item itself. So, yeah. No. When we get to the agenda item, because it's a special item here. So the same things will apply to the 3 minutes. If anybody online, please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing no hands raised, we'll go to the president's report. The only item I have is the Giving Grove. So back in October, Sherwin-Williams did plant 18 trees, some fruit trees, and some bushes, in addition to some little raspberry items around the community garden. And these were all planted. There were apple trees, I believe peach, cherry, and pawpaw, 2 pawpaw trees, which you need to be able to pollinate there. Those trees were all donated by the Giving Grove, which is a national program. There were volunteers that planted the trees from Sherwin-Williams, and they are going to, all the fruit from the trees, when they start to bear fruit, will be donated to the food bank. So they'll be open to the public, and it's a great program sponsored through Tree Pittsburgh, and they're out there for view. And hopefully now they provided the trees themselves, all the planting, and the deer protection for those trees. It's up to us to maintain through watering, which the Shade Tree Commission has been doing up until the trees go dormant. So I'd like to formally thank not only Tree Pittsburgh, but the Shade Tree Commission for their work on this project. All right, that's all I have. The mayor's report.
So, okay, tonight, civil service police exam, the deadline came and went, and we do not have any qualified applicants at this time. I've spoken with the Civil Service Commission. They have a new solicitor that has some suggestions. There's also some other things that we may do. So they will regroup and probably advertise for a new list sometime after the first of the year. And my second item is, after a long process, the search committee is ready to make a recommendation tonight for our new police chief. So before I do that, I want to remind everyone of things that we've been talking about and how this process has evolved over time. So earlier this year, council agreed to retain the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association to do the initial search for us and to do the initial interviews. We were lucky to have nearly 20 applicants, and council approved, because we had so many applicants, approved having 10 of them interviewed. And as a reminder, all of our officers who applied were granted those initial interviews. The interviews themselves were conducted by two panelists from the Chiefs Association, the executive director, and another retired police chief who actually grew up here in Crafton and has had served in Mount Lebanon and at Carnegie Mellon. And the other one was the executive director who has also served as a police chief. The process was that every interviewer, every candidate came in 30 minutes before their interview. They were given packets that had each of them, they were identical questions. They all had 30 minutes to review and make notes. And then the interview itself was conducted. They had 60 minutes and each candidate was asked to control the length of their answers themselves. So they indicated how long they wanted to take for each one, up to 60 minutes. Those interviews occurred over 2 days. Both of the committee members, Councilman Mike Hof and Colton Chandler, plus myself, sat and observed all of those interviews. We did not take part in any of them. So about 10 days later, we received the scoring from the panel, which was done across 7 or 8 different categories, and all of the candidates were ranked based on that. We had some conversations with council in our executive sessions, as we are allowed to do. And it was decided to have second round interviews with the top 3 candidates, which we did with the entire council present. We did similar to the Chiefs organization. We had a handful of questions that we asked exactly the same to all 3 candidates. And then after that, each council person had their time to ask whatever additional questions that they want. Tonight, we are going to be asking council to extend a conditional offer of employment to the person who ranked both first in the initial interview round and in the round with council. And that is Richard Ford, who is currently serving as the Assistant Chief of Operations at the City of Pittsburgh. He is closely associated with our community. They are a St. Philip's family. Their son has attended St. Philip's, and he has coached with some of our community members, and is familiar to not only many of our community members, but our police officers as well. He will be retiring. He is a young retiree, I might say, but he will be retiring from the Pittsburgh Police Force. And because of their requirements around retirement, he will not be able to assume those duties until July 7th. In the interim, Chief Sumter, who is here tonight, has agreed to stay on so that we have a smooth transition. So that said, I would like to ask for a motion from council to extend a conditional offer of employment to Richard Ford.
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ho, and then
Second.
second, Ms. Compitello. Any discussion or questions?
Not a discussion item or a question, just a shout out to the committee that did all that work. I thought it was a really smooth process. I felt super informed the entire time. So I think you guys did a great job and I think you picked the right candidate, so.
Just another point too. I'd like to thank the chief for graciously offering to stay on after many years being employed in Crafton and not taking his retirement as planned right now to stay on and make sure that this transition is smooth. Thank you.
To clarify, conditional offer of employment, it's conditional because there must be certain things met, such as background checks, physical and mental exams, things like that, typical standard things for any police officer. So he must pass those first before we can begin contractual negotiation part of it.
Anything else? Okay, hearing no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, I want to thank everybody for all your hard work and all your attention and willingness to, listen to the interviews and to be involved in the process. I really believe that Richard Ford is the kind of commander that our force will come to respect and to collaborate with and provide support. So thank you very much. And that's it from me tonight.
I'd like to recognize, and I don't know, it was mentioned that Chief Sumter is retiring, which is the reason for the search. And, there'll be more, I'm sure, celebrations coming forward, but your years of service to this borough are so appreciated. And I have heard so much feedback from residents about you and just even my own personal experiences that, it goes without words that I can probably express how much we appreciate all of your time. We want you to enjoy your retirement too.
Just gonna make you wait.
All right, solicitors report.
Should be no surprise, but I just wanted to announce that council held an executive session prior to the meeting tonight to discuss personnel matters. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Engineers report, Mr. Keenan.
Good evening. First item is the Broadhead Sewer Project. And the update is that EPA is currently reviewing all the documents that they had requested. These included application documents, environmental results, and MBE letters that we published in-house. We did actually receive some feedback today, and they had a couple comments. They didn't seem to be too major, but we will continue to look into them and resolve those as soon as possible so that we can get closer to the meeting. Moving on to the stairs project, had a final punch list site meeting yesterday with the contractor and the design engineer, and went over some things that needed to be done before we can finalize opening them. These include removing fencing and construction signage. One of the handrails we're requesting to adjust to increase the clearance between the railing and the wall so that we can become up to code as much as possible, and some other small items. One more thing to note is that there's a 2-year maintenance bond so that we will ensure vegetation and grass growth over the next 2 years along that right away. There's no real update at this time still on the other set of handrails from Crafton to Walnut. Although I did hear that the handrail still was instructed that they do need to be installed by December 12th. So that's their internal deadline. Moving on to the road paving program, as stated before in prior meetings, the paving has been completed for this year. But since we came under budget some and one of the streets we did not end up paving due to a water main break, there was some additional funds available in the road paving contract. And we're looking at possibly considering some change order options, including some other streets and some alleyways, hopefully to get paved by the end of the year. Those lists have been forwarded off to the contractor, Felino, and we're still waiting on estimates on those, but they are expected to be in tomorrow. Moving on.
Do you want to mention?
Sorry.
Locust.
Okay, yeah, so the road that was not paved was Locust Street. And that is because there was an unforeseen water main break. PA American Water went out and did their repairs, and then they decided that it was in the best interest to just replace the entire main along that street. That is scheduled to happen at the end of next year or early 26. And as a result of that, the entire road will be paved for that construction. Now, moving on to Ewing Road. As all of us probably know, this is a road that was recently closed due to some increasing evidence of some subsidence in a few areas. And right now it's been discussed internally to keep it closed temporarily for the time being until we explore more options to address it.
Yeah, we're just more information about that. We are considering all the options. We went back and researched what had been done. The borough was repeatedly told to do a thorough construction of water and what do you call it? Retaining walls, and they decided to not do that. They were told in 2017 how to fix it, and in 2018, and in 2020, an interim manager tried to do it more inexpensively, and unfortunately, it did not work. And that has led. We're not happy about the situation we're in. They spent $90,000 paving it that year and did some additional work, and it didn't even last 4 years. And so we have not done the full investigation yet, but there are lots of options on the table. There's a lot of competing interests. I know that is going to shift a lot of traffic onto Fountain Street, which is not desirable for the folks on Fountain Street. And it makes it longer to get to CIT Field from anywhere else in the borough, frankly. But we're considering all options, including building a gravel road in the valley down by the Public Works building and taking traffic that way, which might possibly be more feasible. In the 2017 letter from Gateway, they were basically told that that should not even be a 2-lane road. At most, they could build a 1-lane road. And that's not what happened. So we're assessing the situation and trying to figure out the best way to navigate it going forward. We also know like I said, there's a lot of competing interests. A lot of people love to walk on that road as well. So I know they would be grateful if we moved the traffic down into the valley, but we are just starting the exploration on that now that we've closed it. And we'll be getting back with folks as soon as we have further information about what we will possibly do next. So,
can you explain what's happening now? There's a portion of Ewing Road that's closed. It's not all of Ewing Road. It's a portion between where?
CIT.
I was gonna say, the portion that's really close between South Grandview Avenue and CIT Fields. And there's at least 2 areas that show significant cracking and some subsidence issues.
Mm-hmm. So based on the evaluation, it's a public safety issue, which we cannot have traffic on or cars going on that road due to the subsidence.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we know if the subsidence is just on the road, or does it threaten like the houses?
No, there's bedrock there. They've done some work on, and they understand the underlying soil issues, but they just have the previous folks that have done work on the road never fully fixed it.
Gotcha.
And frankly, looking at it now that CIT has travel teams, that road really wasn't designed to handle that level of traffic. It is not, it needs work. And so there's a lot of issues we need to figure out before we can move forward.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to the next item, the detention facility along Crafton Boulevard. Okay, so this is probably Crafton Borough's newest stormwater management facility. It's located in the parking lot and grass area across from Crafton Elementary, and is part of the 2020 sewer separation project along Crafton Boulevard. Being in the ground for 4 years, it is to our knowledge that no one has ever gone inside to inspect it or maintain it. We do own it as a borough, and because of that, we do need to maintain it. The manual for it recommends that we clean it at least twice a year. And right now at this time, we reached out to Robinson Pipe contractor to pursue the inspection, cameraing and cleaning out of this facility.
Just to update everyone, it is a fairly difficult thing to do because it is a very large enclosed space underground that has it has more than how many feet of piping? Like,
Well, all the pipes are 8 feet in diameter and the entire system is at least 100 by 100 feet.
right,
So
so
there's like 13 rows of pipe, 100 feet long,
100-foot
five access manholes. It's-
So there's quite a bit of investigation that needs to go on, and we have no idea how much sediment has built up. And so, and it's complicated because when you get down in there, you're in a trapped environment. And if sewer gases are in there or any other issues, then it's dangerous. And currently our public works is not trained to do that type of work. And you need to wear full scuba gear essentially to go in there safely. So we are working through that, right? Well, we're gonna have a contractor do it for now and figure out what the lay of the land. We have no idea what we're gonna encounter when we get in there. Has 4 years led to a ton of work, or has it barely led to anything? We have no idea at this point.
You said
So,
we are supposed to be cleaning it twice.
twice a year.
So we're supposed to be doing that process twice a year?
Yep. And we just don't know what we don't know yet.
And
So-
why haven't we for the last?
Good
3 years?
question.
Okay,
Good question. You know, an O&M manual often are taken and put in a drawer and never looked at again. So,
okay.
but we're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. It does still have flow coming out of it, so we know it's not clogged, but we have no idea what it looks like inside.
It
So-
Sounds cool.
I don't know if it was in the budget, but if this is something that should be done twice a year, we need to make sure that
Yeah.
that cost is.
Yeah, and we have no idea what that cost is
Yeah,
gonna be
I
yet,
just-
so, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the next item is the PA American Water main replacement that occurred over the course of the summer. The update is based on Union Avenue, where Solente Construction has started the restoration of the brick road along there. It is expected to take about 4 to 6 weeks to complete. So far, they're moving along, no major issues. I'd like to note that this is the same contractor that did the road restoration along North Grandview and Clearview. And so far, we've heard nothing but good comments from residents and work looks good. So with that, move on to the trail feasibility study. So we've had a social media post out now for quite some time, couple weeks, allowing residents to make their submissions to be part of the steering committee for the trail study. That deadline is tomorrow, and it was decided that the vacancy committee will be the one selecting the members, and that process should be completed by the next council meeting. Like just say,
Just
Sorry.
clarify, who made that decision?
that's a good question.
Just to clarify, the infrastructure committee did make the recommendation to bring that to council, but I wasn't aware that a decision had been made. We wanted to make that recommendation for council.
Okay.
Oh, I wasn't aware. I thought we had that's just decided, because it wasn't a big decision, but if you want council to make that, that's fine. I didn't understand that I didn't understand it either. So do you want a motion on?
I don't know if a motion was needed, but just for clarity's purposes, and because an email was sent to council, the infrastructure committee did do some research, which was discussed at the last council meeting on examples on how other communities have done this. Looked into some, examples and best practices that was gathered. It was sent to council with the recommendation that the infrastructure committee planned to recommend that the vacancy committee take that on. But it was stated that we wanted this to be council's decision.
You want to ask for a motion?
Okay, that said, I'd like to call for a motion that we allow the vacancy committee to be the group that selects the members for the trail study steering committee.
So moved.
And Mr. Rodilla
Second,
and Mr. Hope. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. The next item is the Public Works Building. This has actually received a major update over the course of today. But we did put out bids for the sanitary sewer lateral and we received them on the 5th. We did get a recommendation and for the lowest bidder, but we did get an update today from Alcosan, unexpectedly questioning the tie-in to their manhole, in which we plan on doing. And right now, before we go ahead and award this, we want to make some confirmation on a couple of things to make sure that we don't go up in costs and that we can still tie in with their manhole and amongst other things, but that shouldn't take more than a month to decide. No questions on that? Okay. The next item is the C20 sewer separation, small update here. It's up for bidding right now currently, and that the second advertisement went out today. Next item, moving on to the C20 green infrastructure projects. As mentioned in the last meeting, we recapped the original designs and layouts for the BMPs that will be used. That came along with a presentation from Gateway. Since then, we discussed to pursue all possible options, and as a result, we came up with some alternative options, and we have also a presentation based on those today.
At bottom right, isn't it?
It's easier, Craig, if you sit over there. That way everybody can see behind you. Yeah. And I can see.
You can just sit at that, like,
Mhm.
yep.
Yeah.
So I'm Craig Jubick from Gateway Engineers. I was here at the last council meeting. We kind of went over the GSIs and the overall kind of C20 project. So what I wanted to do was just kind of like recap or kind of refresh the GSIs and kind of reintroduce them with a couple different illustrations. And then also go over the work that we had done or completed since the last council meeting, as Larry mentioned, on the other alternatives. So just to kind of quickly recap, the overall C20 watershed, shown in this map here is the purple area, the shaded purple area. That's essentially where we have the source reduction that we're, trying to meet the consent order. We kind of talked through the separation projects that are shown in red and in kind of the cyan color up there. But then supplement those, we also needed other projects to meet the overall reduction. So this is kind of where the GSI came into play. And just to kind of clarify too, and redefine the GSIs, that's the green stormwater infrastructure. And basically those are, lower impact, green development, that's mainly for smaller frequent storms. Different than a separation because it's, taking a smaller flush and kind of cycling it through, but it's still going back to the combination sewer. So all of the work that we had, put into these GSIs initially, just to kind of touch on them briefly again, we reviewed multiple neighborhoods up through these areas. We went out, we looked at different drainage areas, roof leader connects, and then any opportunities we could to disconnect the roof leaders. We also did infiltration testing at these locations that we documented. We'll provide the Alcosan. And then we also, as a follow-up to the last meeting, we had vetted the GSI locations that we had along Oregon, Dakota, and Montana up in that area with the local fire chief. He had a few comments, we addressed them. So we've kind of worked through that as well. So in terms of the GSIs, I wanted to just kind of talk through some of the benefits of them. And I think, Larry, you might be able to go to the next slide. So what we're kind of illustrating on this plan here, just with a simple aerial background, so you can kind of see. These are the GSIs provided or designed along Oregon. There's 5 of them in varying locations, on the north and south side of, I believe that's Montana, the intersection shown there. So the benefits of the GSIs, at least the way that they're placed here on this exhibit, is that they're located entirely within the right of way. So there's no property impacts to any of the residents. They don't require any right of way or easement acquisitions. There's no impact on the street parking or the driveways as we had designed them. The neighborhood, the roadway, drainage, all of that, you know, there's significant improvement by, you know, taking some of this runoff out of the cartway and the roadways and basically managing it a little bit better. Because the thing that we noticed with the GSIs through all of these neighborhoods up here is that there's no existing inlets. And all of this drainage area flows down south to Steuben. And that's where it's collected in catch basins and inlets, and it goes into the combination sewer. So the other thing that we noticed with the Steuben Street combination, as we were looking at these drainage areas, specifically in this area as well, is that the GSI seemed like a good application for this specific area, because as you go down along Steuben, we would have required to add like an additional 1,000 lineal feet of dedicated storm sewer that would have to run down Steuben basically to Crafton Avenue and pick up where the other separation project that runs down to Linden would be. The other benefit that we saw with the GSIs in specific concentrated areas here is that by clustering them, it greatly reduces the construction costs with mobilization, and it also provides somewhat of a complete street benefit rather than sporadic placement on, you know, 6 to 8 different roadways. It also reduces earth disturbance, overall traffic, you know, reduction or disruption, I mean, to the neighborhood. And then the other thing that we saw as part of these alternatives that I'll kind of discuss briefly is the GSIs. They basically project into the right of way 2 feet, or not the right of way, the cartway. But we did look at options where we could potentially put the GSIs underneath the roadway. But with increased costs of brick restoration, as well as mainline infrastructure, that was one thing that was kind of restrictive. So that was another benefit of looking at these GSIs in these specific locations. So just quickly, the considerations we had to were the street parking in through these areas. We also looked at crossover to sidewalks to make sure they weren't, you know, excessively long. We also looked at the existing cartway, the sidewalk, the green strip, to still provide a 20-foot cartway in through there with a 4-foot sidewalk. The existing brick roadways, we were striving to maintain the integrity of those with curbing, with sidewalk. Existing driveway conflicts, like I had previously mentioned, we, you know, looked at that, considered that, tried to stop them short of driveways. Overall utility impacts with utility poles, fire hydrants, the mainline infrastructure, all the service utilities from the main lines to the residents, all of that stuff was taken into consideration. We actually went through 2 or 3, you know, different renditions of kind of scaling these things down. Larry, actually, if you want to go to the next slide too, I think this visual helps a little bit more to kind of see it from a like rendered perspective of what it's actually going to look like. And what we were trying to show on there too was, so you can see where all the plantings are. Those are essentially the GSI areas, which blend into the 2-foot existing vegetated strip that runs along the sidewalk as it is. You can see parked cars on the opposite side of the street. There's a couple dimensions on there showing the cartway widths. Shows how we're maintaining sidewalks. I mean, really all it is just a little area, you know, between the sidewalk and the cartway that we're taking the green strip and then we're taking 2 feet out and making these GSIs. They have little curb cuts through there that run off down along the curb gutter line will enter these, basically, you know, be trapped, infiltrate, and either evapotranspirate or make its way back out through our under drain connected to the combination sewer. Just quickly, other things we looked at and considered too were tripping hazards with the depths of these GSIs to not make them too deep, as well as potential impacts with you know, vehicles coming through the area. Essentially, at the end of the day, these are very small, low impact. They don't really change much of the integrity within the right of way at these locations. If you want to go to the next slide. I kind of talked through this last council meeting as well, but you know, we did consider and look through different planting applications in here. Tried to put, you know, colorful, low maintenance, the species that don't grow, you know, too high, maybe 2-3 feet high. They don't project out to the sides. Low maintenance, just overall performance, just something to kind of dress it up. So it's not just like a mulch or a gravel pit. So that kind of in a nutshell was the GSIs. Now, I'll kind of just run through, you know, what we did since last council meeting with reviewing, kind of researching different projects and alternatives to this. Larry, if you want to go back to the, I think first slide, might be the easy, yeah. So we essentially reviewed and researched, you know, 30+ different projects from a high level. And basically with that, we looked at different locations. We looked at contributory drainage areas, impacts to roadways, sidewalks, just overall neighborhoods. We took all that into consideration. We focused on areas at Richmond, at Hewitt and Thomas. We looked at Walsh, Lawson, Grace, Union, Crafton Avenue, a lot of those residential areas, kind of where he's pointing there to the east along Steuben, and then some opportunities down along where we're doing the separation project up to Linden, where Walsh and Richmond kind of intersect down at that T. So with that, all these alternatives we looked at, we talked through with the engineering committee earlier this week. We had a bunch of pros for a lot of these, but we also had, you know, a few cons as well. So just kind of summarize a lot of these different options. There were pros of, you know, there was higher performance, obviously for separation projects versus the GSIs. There was removing any impacts to the cartway widths by, you know, placing or siting these projects in different areas. If we did underground GSIs, that obviously eliminates any maintenance of vegetation on the surface. You know, one thing that would need to be considered too is, you know, underground GSI similar to the tank that Larry just mentioned too, that obviously needs O&M, you know, once or twice a year as well. So one way or another, there's still going to be continued annual O&M with these BMPs. There was also no property acquisition for some of these scenarios. Some of the roadways we looked at were one-way streets versus two-way streets. Just different opportunities there to, you know, reduce cartway a little bit and not have as significant of an impact. The other thing we considered too were some of the availability of the survey and previous engineering that we had looked at in these areas, because we did vet a lot of these areas up front before selecting the GSIs and the separation projects. So we did consider all of that as well. And then the other thing too, which I think we sort of have in the scenario of Dakota, is like a two-way dead end streets. So we were kind of looking at like how much, you know, traffic would be anticipated on different roadways and taking that into consideration as well. Some of the cons for different GSIs we looked at through these areas, with some of them, I think up on Lawson on the far east. That was obviously more toward the top of a drainage area, so we weren't getting too much to that area. And then also the roads are somewhat steeper up there than some of these other applications. The GSIs are just not ideal for very steep roadways. Mainline infrastructure impacts as well. We start putting them out in the roadway, or one of the options we looked at along Richmond for GSI, there was too many existing gas line impacts. Like I mentioned, small capture areas, or, you know, essentially the drainage areas, we could get to them. While also running the overall model to make sure we're meeting the C20 reduction. Again, the brick restoration costs, and then right-of-way impacts to property owners, and not so much on private property. But one of the I think alternative to that we can kind of talk through a little bit too is like keeping the GSIs, or keeping the cartway as it is, but pushing the GSIs into the sidewalk and kind of pushing the sidewalk back, which causes some regrading of front lawn areas that are still in the right of way, but it would have impacts to some steps and also to sidewalk width, and basically create a jog down the sidewalk. So just thinking of all that stuff and continuity and pedestrian movements, those were things that we considered as well. So that's kind of everything that we looked at. You know, we built a list, we looked at overall performance of a lot of these projects, we analyzed them. And like Larry mentioned, we're essentially down to kind of the 4 alternatives that are listed on the agenda. So to kind of talk through those 4, you know, very quickly. The first one, to move the green infrastructure from Oregon being a 2-way to Noble being a 1-way. So in looking at this option, it also had advantages, disadvantages. Along Noble, we're not getting as significant a drainage area to it. In the location that we previously had it, that we have survey, I think opposite the street, there's an apartment complex there with parking that I believe the residents probably back out, you know, pull in. So I think that area becomes a little bit tight with that, but it's still an option we could look at for viability. Second option being building green infrastructure on Oregon without extensions into the roadway. That's the one I was kind of mentioning about keeping the cartway width, but pushing it back into the sidewalk. But one of the issues we see along Oregon is that the combination sewer actually runs under the sidewalk. So I think by doing that on that specific roadway, it would put the GSIs essentially over top of the sanitary. So we were looking at potential ways that we could get around that. But then the other thing with that too is when we push it back, we have to make it a little bit smaller. So by doing that, we're losing some performance and efficiency, which is another thing we'd have to just kind of rerun through our model and make sure that we're meeting the overall consent order requirements. I think 3 and 4 are somewhat tied together just because they're at that kind of T intersection that we were looking at with Walsh and with Richmond. So these 2 seem like just initially like very viable options. But one thing I want to kind of explain or clarify with that is you can kind of see up there from the cyan line that that's the current Linden separation that we have through there. But the one thing I want to note with that is our final kind of current design right now, but that's not actually where we started. So when we were looking at all these areas, it was intended to come from Crafton Avenue down to Paper Street and then run back into the shopping center, right where his cursor is there. So to get down to Richmond and bring Richmond back, we would have been essentially bucking grade to come back. It would have been more infrastructure. It wasn't really a viable option at that point. So then as we looked more at the Linden separation, it became more viable of an option to run it all the way down to Linden and then take it back toward Maxwell. So the second kind of redesign that we had there was running it down in that configuration that was shown. But at the time, we had existing utility conflicts. We were still trying to figure those out with depths and everything. So we were actually the new storm sewer was going to be too high that we couldn't connect either the inlet at the bottom of Richmond that's actually on Steuben Street and the one in Walsh, because those would have tied in much lower than the storm. So then as we were analyzing further, we found that we needed to upsize the pipes and the whole system, the dedicated storm system had to go much deeper. So now in its final configuration, and as Larry mentioned, it's out to bid right now, that dedicated storm actually goes deep enough that it seems viable that we could tie the inlet at the bottom of Richmond on Steuben and or the one from Walsh into it. But the potential issue with that would be that we may need to upsize the dedicated storm that we had designed from that intersection all the way down to the intersection at Maxwell. So that's something we're kind of looking at, like the cost implications of, doing that and then possibly not doing the GSIs and seeing what the alternative would be there. So I think essentially those four options or those alternatives, those are essentially what we're still kind of analyzing and, down to those final options out of the 30 plus that we had started with.
Can I just add, thank you for that overview. That was really a very good recap. This is mostly what the infrastructure committee discussed on Tuesday. It took most of the entirety of our meeting. And I think that was a very good recap. The only thing I would add is that the sewer separation project options number 3 and 4, those were the committee's preferences. But it is also one of the things that they're still exploring is that if we do have to upsize that pipe, it's not yet known whether there's actually space to do that because there are constraints underground with other utilities. So I think that is maybe the one thing that was left out. That seems like a really great option. And that was the committee's preferred option if it's viable. But we have asked Gateway to do additional surveying and research to determine now if we do have to upsize that pipe to be able to take an additional sewer separation project. Is there actually space to do that? And so they should have an answer for us next time.
Okay. In the event that it is possible, we talked about, performance versus the GSIs. What's the performance of the number 3 and 4 sewer separations versus the GSI? Like, what's the difference in performance?
I can't give you a specific number, but I can tell you that the pure separation projects are more attractive to Alcosan and just overall because you're dropping new inlets and you're taking that physical stormwater runoff out of the combination sewer. So it's not going with sanitary to Alcosan. The GSIs are taking smaller areas out, through the neighborhood. It's not as much flow or volume as some of those inlets in those locations specifically based on the drainage areas we looked at. But overall, the separations are, they're more cost effective or dollar, cost per gallon removed. And actually alternatively, when you're looking at the GROW grant with Alcosan, they tend to match a higher amount for separations because it is providing better overall performance.
Okay, thank you.
There is a caveat with that.
Yeah.
And that is that, and I don't know that Rick explained this well, or if you could give a better explanation, but because we're applying for green infrastructure at this point, if we do a separation project, we will probably have to pay for it ourselves and then recoup the money, like apply and recoup the money after the fact. Which we didn't anticipate getting a lot of money for the GSI projects anyway, like I said in the budget workshop, so we didn't budget that very high, but just a warning that we might have to pay for it first. And I mean, we would have to do that anyway. The difference is we would actually have to do the project, then apply for the grant, then wait to see if we get it, and then, so.
I have a question about that actually, because that wasn't fully clear to me. And
Yeah, it
we were so focused in the
Yes.
infrastructure meeting on all the options and what to tell the engineer to proceed with exploring further. We didn't get into a detailed conversation about funding. It sounded to me like we weren't sure if we would even be able to get the funding, like we could apply for it afterwards, but we may not get it at all. So we run the risk that we might have to shoulder the entire cost ourselves for this, specific piece of that additional separation project, if that is viable and if that's the route we go.
Okay.
I wasn't clear on that, and I'm not sure
I'm
if
not
we
sure.
have answers. We can apply afterwards. Do we have a sense that it would be very likely that we would get it, or is it unknown?
I'd say is that we have already laid the groundwork to have those conversations and meetings without Sam
Okay,
next meeting. So we'll have more information and we'll know more about cost differences. Not to throw numbers out, but if it was $650,000 for the GSIs, you're gonna get 200,000 from grant, you're funding 450. If we can get things to work out with the separation and it's 300,000, that's still less than what you were putting on the GSIs.
Mhm.
And even if we only were able to get half of that back as a post-construction grant, there's ways to determine what's coming out now and test it later and demonstrate that what we did has significant benefit and that has happened in the past to do it that way. It's just you can't guarantee it because it's post-construction.
so, well, that's good to know. So you're going to be seeking some more information from Alcoasand about that too. So presumably by the time we have enough information to make a decision about what we're proceeding with, we'll also have more information about what the chances or likelihood will be that we'll be able to recoup some costs later on.
Being that the sewer separation part is already gone out for bidding, advertisement. These were two separate projects before, but now it sounds like they're becoming like one integrated thing, especially with upsizing a pipe. How would that be? Would they still be handled as two separate projects? And how would we change the size of the pipe? Would there have to be a change order for that? And how would that affect our existing grant?
Yeah, so that is out for bid right now, so that's exactly what would happen. We would have to do a change order for the one that is current. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
What we're anticipating is that there's a mandatory pre-bid meeting on Tuesday next week. We're gonna have some more conversations tomorrow. What we may do is issue an addendum to plans orders and push that pre-bid meeting back and push the bid opening back to give us a couple more weeks to get an answer on this.
Okay.
As opposed to letting them bid it as it is and then in the middle of them putting their bid together, say, oh, the pipe can actually be bigger. It's not that big of a deal to lose a month.
Yeah.
We lose 3 or 4 weeks on the bid opening and get another contract. It's not gonna start until March or April anyway.
Okay.
So
So I'd rather take that time to get those answers. So we may take the bid opening and the pre-bid meeting back.
okay, unfortunately, I don't think anybody will be able to hear you online or on the recording. So as you were talking, I was thinking of that. So if you're going to talk, make sure to either come up to the mics or whatever. So, because I think you had great information. Yeah, you had great information.
Closed caption didn't pick him up, so if they
Okay.
couldn't hear him, they'd still be able to
Oh,
read it.
Okay.
I was
great.
watching.
Great. I think, in hearing everything, options 3 and 4 would have very little impact on residents. So there would be no GSIs, there wouldn't be anything around that would involve. Walsh is, of course, in the shopping center. Richmond just comes off the little leg off of Steuben. So whatever we can do to look, and it sounds like they're also going to be a bigger flow reduction with number 3 and 4. So whatever we can do to make sure that those get the right attention they need, I think is.
Because ultimately, we want to get to an answer that's gonna get the best reduction and
Right.
it's gonna be the least amount of money out of
Right.
municipalities.
Mhm.
Yeah, I suppose we could add there too. So Gateway's been doing there's fairly elaborate modeling that has to be done for all of these things. And so with all the different, options that they look at, they do, a first round, and then we see what is highest performing and then proceed to the next round, more detailed, intricate modeling. So what we had as of Tuesday was just preliminary numbers. But so Gateway is proceeding now with these 4 options to do more intricate, more detailed modeling, as well as analysis of the feasibility regarding things like the underground utilities that could be impacted. But as of that preliminary analysis, the expectation is that if we do one of those sewer separation projects, it would help, it would get us to our target, as opposed to the GSIs where we needed to do multiple locations throughout a given area. So, we will know more next time, but that is what it appears to be. That's the expectation, that if we do one of them, we will be done.
And this will end our obligation under the consent decree for sewer project.
Which we-
Really changed.
Yes, so this has been a very long process, probably for the last 5+ years. And this will be the last, at least for that. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Craig. That was a great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Good.
Continuing on, the Station Street retaining wall. Again, this is the retaining wall along Station Street and corner of Division, bordering the Port Authority busway. The first steps to remediating this was to get a survey done that was completed, and part of that result was showing the wall encroaching onto the Port Authority's property for a little bit. And part of the next steps alongside final design was some coordination with Port Authority, thinking that we may have a difficult time getting out to them, communicating with them, and just getting answers in general. But luck happened to be on our side, where we did get some initial feedback from them, and they said that this could be something as simple as a service agreement with them to get the work done, and we may not have to pursue an easement, but that work is still being pursued. And yeah, that's the update on the retaining wall. The next item is the police station garage basement. Again, this is pertaining to the deteriorating concrete supports in the basement. We did receive a work authorization proposal for $5,000. Needed to move forward with the final designs and the mediation for the damage done there. But after some internal conversations and talking about ongoing issues within the borough, it has been decided that for the time being, this work will be put on hold. Yep. And moving on to the last item, the People's Gas Main work. It's the work with the capital improvements happening on Coulter, North Emily, North Linwood. No major update other than the work is ongoing. Haven't received any major updates, complaints, issues. The scheduled completion date is the 25th, so we still do have about 10 more days until this work is scheduled to wrap up. That's the update with that. No other questions, and that concludes the engineer's report.
Right, thank you, Larry. Okay, next is manager's report.
Right. Thank you. First thing on the list is the zoning update. We are, the planning commission right now is selecting a solicitor. The next planning commission meeting is next week, next Tuesday, on the 19th at 6:30 or 6:30. And then any further and additional forums and discussions will be planned after that point. So that's where we're at with that. The next item I have on my list, you said you want Mara to speak?
Yeah, so 11 Fountain Street. We have a resident who brought up an issue with Fountain Street, so she's going to speak in 3 minutes or so, and then we'll do a little bit of history about what happened, and then our council.
Yep.
My name is Mara Burgess, and I sent you all an email because I didn't think I could.
What's your street, Laura?
11 North Emily Street. I didn't think I could spell this out in 3 minutes. I wanted you guys, first of all, to have a detailed thing, and I didn't want you to be caught with a gotcha, like what's going on. But I really feel that this property is a disaster, and Mr. Price's response was Belvedere, Belvedere, Belvedere. I don't understand what Belvedere has to do with this. If I'm understanding correctly, you're gonna go through this whole process with Belvedere. And if it works, then you're gonna do Fountain, correct?
We're not necessarily gonna go through the whole process. We're gonna start the process, and you'll know whether it's working fairly quickly. And then we'll decide whether we can move forward with Fountain. But there's other options for Fountain as well.
Can you give me a timeline?
I cannot.
when is the conservancy or when are you starting conservancy on Crafton?
No, we're starting conservancy on Belvedere right now, on 82 Belvedere, one house.
And how long does that take?
We don't know yet.
And then there's a process of you bidding it out, and then they have to do the work, and then you have to put it on the
Correct.
market.
Correct. And most likely, the full process would probably take somewhere in the ballpark of 2 years.
And then you're gonna decide whether or not it's worth it to do fountains.
No, we're, like I said, we're gonna get started with the process. Once we've gotten the process moving, probably once we have contractors in, then we can figure out whether it's working the way we'd like. So maybe at the end of this year, we could decide, or at the end of next year, at the end of 2025.
So Mar, why don't you go through your items and then Jim can go through, like, lay out the history, because especially for the public, they don't know everything that's happening too.
We own the property next door, and our tenants were complaining that there was raccoons hissing at them. So we, all budget pest control, they could not put traps in that yard, they can only put in our yard. So in 8 days, they caught 15 raccoons and 5 possums. It cost us $1,600. So the lack of motion in the last 5 years is costing us money. So I don't want to keep doing this. And if it's gonna take that long, then maybe we should just take it over. We'll just do it. We'll take care of it. Because if it's gonna take, you say 2 years, but it's.
No, that was, so if you're done, let me finish. I can go through the whole process.
Okay.
So there are 3 main options.
Let's try, because
I'll go through that.
Yeah.
Let me do
We'll
this. So
withdraw.
I know,
Yeah.
I'll go through that. So basically 11 Fountain Street is a home that was condemned in 2018. It's watertight though. It had water damage, but it has been shut. So it is not getting more damage, but it does have a lot of, they basically left it and hightailed out of town. And there's trash and there's waste around the whole thing. And that's what's causing probably causing a lot of the rodent issues that we're having. But this is the responsibility of that homeowner who has left it. So the borough has a lot of options when you're dealing with dilapidated housing. The last option should be demolishing it, because when you demolish a house, and I can show you this because there's probably more than 30 houses around the borough that have never been rebuilt. When you demolish a house, it almost never gets rebuilt because it's a single house on a lot. And typically that owner had nothing to do with it. That owner has left almost always when you get to the point of a demolished house. And so the next person who comes back and builds it, for one thing, if that lot is not big enough, which that lot is not, that lot would not get built again. It's only a 3,000 square foot lot. So under none of our code would that be able to be built again. Even though we have more than 300 houses built on lots of that size. And so that's one reason you don't want to go with the last resort. So there's a lot of other tools that we have that the borough has never really used before. One is joining a land bank. That is a very good option. The other is conservatorship, which is that long process that we've been talking about. A land bank is a law that was passed in 2012 in Pennsylvania, where a entity can be created to basically buy properties and rehab them to the point where they're sellable, which that property is not at this point. And then they sell it at a very cheap price, and we're allowed to review who they sell it to. And then it's a way that, and they're funded by delinquent taxes. So they don't have to make a profit off of it. So they're able to bank these houses and then turn them around and make them usable. So we're looking, and so those are the best options. In the case of yours, what I would recommend we do is, first off, because the biggest issue you're having right now is you want to have a secure house that doesn't have rodents. What we can do is we can cite that house, which has already been cited, but we can cite it again so that we have this right to go in and do this. And then we can pay to go clean up the outside of that house and secure it so that it's not a risk from a rodent perspective for you. But it allows us to hang on to the house, and then when we get to a process like a conservatorship or whatnot, then we can repair it. But that would be my recommendation moving forward, and that way we're not losing out on the house, you know, and a potential family living there at some point in the future. And we get to satisfy your need of having a secure house next to your rental property. And then we can try out the other things that we'd like to do to protect and prevent buildings from being demolished in the borough.
And then if demolish was an option, so that's where the borough can just go and demolish the house?
After if it's tax delinquent and has liens, yeah, we can demolish. I forget the exact rules on when we can demolish the house, but it has to be condemned. I don't know.
If it was condemned in 2018, we'd probably want to refresh that. We also have to check to make sure there aren't any mortgages or other financial instruments that are binding the property where we would have to deal with a bank, et cetera. They don't want us to tear down their assets. I'll put that in air quotes because that's questionable as to whether or not they could get their monies back. And once that happens, you usually just go to court and get a court order. And then you can let the contract, just like you would any other demolition. But that process would take 4 to 8 months, depending on the court and depending on entanglements with other liens against the property for mortgages or other financial instruments. That those complicate things, can drag it out for a year or more.
And who would pay for the demolition?
The borough would, and at the end, we would file a lien against the property to recoup the monies. Now, all of the tax liens or any other liens that are there, they would still exist, and you'd have to look at whether or not that total amount and what the sale of the vacant lot could produce makes sense, right? Sometimes when you have a vacant lot, you can't recoup all of the money, and our lien for the demolition would be, secondary to all the tax liens, et cetera. And frankly, for lots or even properties with buildings on them that aren't very appealing, oftentimes the school district or the municipality, if they're moving to do that, will ask for the property to be sold what's called free and clear, and that is without paying any of the liens. And that then at that point, you wouldn't get any back taxes, you wouldn't get your lien paid, but the property could change hands to somebody who may use it. That's kind of the trade-off with a free and clear sale. So
based on what you've seen, is that property refurbishable?
Because the one thing that the main thing, the foundation is not damaged from our outside and it's watertight. Those are the two biggest things that we look for when you're trying to find out if a property is rehabable at all. Obviously, until we get inside it and did a full assessment, I couldn't assure that. And we can do that as a part of this. If we cite them again, we can try to get an administrative search warrant to actually enter the building and do that look, and then we'll have a better idea of thoroughly whether that longer process makes sense.
Can we get in there?
I don't think so. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're
you
very
can't,
versed in rehabbing. So
well, I mean,
my point is is that wouldn't you rather us risk our money than you guys risking the taxpayers' money?
Well, I'd rather keep the house than not keep the house. Because long-term, if you're gonna pay taxes on a $5,000 lot versus a $130,000 house,
No, but.
That's the tax-
Program, they would forgive the taxes.
I'm aware of that, but I'm talking about taxes going forward. And if you're the boroughs, it would prefer to keep houses as opposed to demolishing them again, because that house can't be rebuilt. So, yeah.
I'd love to rehab that, but I don't want to sit and look at that piece of disaster for 2 years. So I'd rather just apply and let us take it over because we get stuff done.
So can they apply, can they use the side yard program to acquire the property with the house still on it? Or does that only apply if the house?
Yes, but I think you have to show a plan.
We did it at our house, fixed our house, and we bought the property, and it was too far gone because it needed 44 windows and a new roof and new HVAC and everything, so we tore it down and put in a tennis court.
Mhm.
So that's, you have to board the property, so I've already done this before. In the past, I don't know if this is still the case, but in the past, you had 6 months to fix it up or tear it down.
Yeah, I think you have to provide a plan when you get when you do the vacant property recovery program. Is that?
And that's the problem with my application is that they're saying, you know, we have $100,000 line of credit, which we're completely financed for it. But they're saying, how much is this gonna cost you? I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. I wanna get in the house.
Yeah.
Cause we're quite versed in this.
Yeah. So with an administrative search, I mean, is there any way for them to be able to?
The search warrant would apply to the borough.
I mean, we could take in and video it and when we go in, but legally, I think we're liable if we allow someone else to come in with us.
We would, I mean.
We can sign a disclaimer saying you're not responsible. If we fall through the floor, we fall through the floor.
That was what I was thinking. That's about the only way that I would be comfortable with that is if they basically signed a full release of any and all claims
I'm
related
fine with that.
entering the property with the boroughs.
I'm fine with.
I'd like to get in there and then I will start the process because the application for the side yard program, it says, you know, how much this, you have to do a detail, the kitchen, the bathroom, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we can discuss all, yeah, that's fine. We can do that. So the administrative search warrant will take time to get. Because we have to post it and we have to, so it's probably a few months out at that point, but we can start that process now.
I think the residents of Crafton would rather have us have the liability for the risk than you guys. And it's gonna be done a lot faster. And that block will get cleaned up a lot faster.
So
Yeah.
if we know that these complaints have been made, and we do know, why can't we just proceed with doing the next citation and moving it forward so that we can get in and do the inspection?
Well, that's what we are gonna do.
So clearly we know who owns the home.
No, I mean, you know who's listed, but yeah, no one, that's not how it works. When homes like this, like, yes, we know the name of the person who owns it, but we have no idea where they are.
My
I mean,
understanding
yeah.
was there was some police event and they went in there and it was a disaster, real, it was uninhabitable. And so they basically said, get out. And in 2017, they said, you have 30 days to tear it down. That's what the complaint was, or what Season sent me.
Okay.
That's what it was. And nothing's happening. Nothing is gonna happen.
I just felt like you were saying like whatever step one was issuing something. I made it seem like it was going to a person. Is that
Oh,
just?
no. This is like to the court.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is an administrative search warrant. So if you want to be able to go into a property that you don't own, you have to prove to the courts that you have a right to be there. And that's an administrative search warrant. Probable cause to be there. Yes, thank you.
And I just,
been in the
for
house.
everybody's information,
It's been in the house.
I've searched the
Recently?
lot and block.
2016.
at The county
She almost bought it.
Department of Court Records, and there are liens that, and there's probably more, but this doesn't go back that far, but it goes back all the way to 1999. And it's every year since then, so
But
25
with the
years.
side yard program as we had, there was fast taxes on 19 North Emily. And they came back to us and said, we applied, they came back to us and said, you have to buy it now. And that was in 2018. So we had to pay for it. And then they took another year to get all the taxes forgiven. So we didn't
It's
actually,
1997 is the oldest. Sorry.
so that's, I mean, we've had experience with this program because
And that's actually another benefit of a land bank, is a land bank's able to buy properties free and clear. They're able to wipe out all the back taxes. But that'll happen with the vacant property with rubber. If you guys get inside, when we get inside and you want to buy it because you think it, you think it's in a position that you can deal with it, Yeah, we're happy to do that.
Who,
I have no problem.
who
with
does if she buys it, where does the money go? Does it just pay for all of the liens on the property then? And the owner,
We wouldn't buy it unless it means.
unless,
We bought a 5,000 square foot house on a half acre for $2,800.
right?
That's what they charge us.
The money basically goes to the county for the processing, and then the rest, everything else is, nobody else gets their money. That's part of, the people who own the houses have given up their right to, I mean, the amount of liens, it sounds like.
Oh,
they
because
probably
they
would-
can't.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So in conclusion, we're saying that we can do an administrative search warrant. And then,
Well, we can start the process of getting an administrator,
Process.
because we had a very hard time getting it for Belvedere.
okay,
Yep.
So,
We did.
yeah.
In the meantime, you mentioned the next step is to do a second citation,
Yep.
which seems like we should just go ahead and do that.
Yep.
And then
No, that's what he's saying, you need a fresh citation.
that's just the process, but then you'd also mentioned, once we do that, we can do some mediation for the rodents. Does that involve waiting for the administrative due process, the warrant, the administrative warrant, or is that external to the property that we can do once we
Yeah.
do the second citation?
Yes, because it's external. So what you would do is you would issue a notice of violation to the property owner and post the property. Basically, at this point, they'd have 20 days to do it. I think that's what we say in our, and if they don't make those corrections, which they won't, then the borough has the right to enter the property and make those fixes, whether it's cleaning up, whatever rodent extermination, we can send somebody in there to do that. And that would be a lien against the property, which, it may never be repaid, but, or we may not even file it. I wouldn't, why spend money on me to file a lien that'll never be collected? And go for, right, I agree. And that's, that's the way you would handle that. And then it could give some immediate relief while we work through the rest of the process.
It seems like a good approach. Let's do a second citation. Might take a few weeks to get to the point that the 20 days are passed, but then we can go at least external to the property and start assessing rodent issues, perhaps doing some traps or whatever can be done, at least getting started with what seems
There doesn't
feasible to do.
seem to be any road issues right now that my tenants are telling me about. I don't know if there is or not, but we've walked around the property, foundation is solid, that kind of thing. I don't see any evidence of that. It was really bad. It was a raccoon party back in when we did that last one. So,
the rodents now will be hunkering down, hibernating, probably going into the house, so you may not see a lot of them outside. And that's probably what we need to see if we go inside, because they may be in there or elsewhere. So,
make it clear, as I am a preservationist, I live in an 1892 house. I don't want to tear this thing down, but I don't want to live next to, have my tenants live next to a disaster.
Right.
So I want to move ahead with that.
and for information, this house was on the list several years ago for the cog, or the Shea cog. And it did not make the approval to get it torn down at that time.
Yeah,
That was several
they're
votes.
funding less of that,
Mhm.
so that's also part of it, is the CDBG funds are not being used, they're not. You usually, they've done that, they used to just give it up for that all the time, and now they're not doing it.
I would really like to flip this and make a dime, I really would.
Yes. Yeah, well, we'd love to help you, so we'll be there.
One last separate question. Is Peoples going to, tar or asphalt the streets, and is Crafton gonna come through and bring it back up for the separation of the sewer?
That is a site by site conversation. We are doing our best to coordinate that ahead of time, but sometimes there's emergency repairs, sometimes they don't tell us. Yeah,
I just kind of think that's kind of a waste of money.
we agree.
I reached out
100%.
to People's Gas about this matter prior, and they said that they'd be willing to work with us on a contribution agreement where they would just restore the trenches and then they would provide us some funds to restore the road. But like you said, the broadhead project, that will take that over.
And not to correct you, but there were funds. a lot of complaints. Because people didn't contact anybody.
Right.
I'm aware.
Yeah, we're real aware of that and we contacted them. Larry mentioned at the other meeting and we talked to you, Mara, too, about their lack of communication. In the future, we know what we can do, which is we can actually shut them down and make them go off. And then until they communicate to residents that things are going to happen on that area, they can't work.
We have
So,
complained a lot about that too.
yes.
Well-
Unless it's an emergency situation like we had on Crafton Boulevard on Monday.
Or Steuben today.
Yeah, Steuben today, where it's an emergency situation, if it's a planned item that they're going to go under the ground to fix a utility, they have to notify us and the residents.
I really appreciate you guys all listening to me and I really like move forward with this, because I would love to get that house. I don't want to tear it down, but if I have to acquire it, I'd rather have my husband and I take the risk than the taxpayers are traveling.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mara.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. This is a recent, we had knowledge of this a couple months ago, but it has gotten significantly worse over the last couple months. And that is over the last 6 to 12 months, a tear has appeared in the salt shed cover. And it's expanded by over 300% in the last 2 months, needs to be replaced. Essentially, what it means is rain is pouring on salt, which we all know how that goes. And we pay a lot for that salt, so we don't want it to go away. And we do have an additional $20,000 left in the salt budget line. So I'd like to get a motion to approve the purchase of a salt shed cover for the Public Works salt shed and installation for $16,922.
So moved.
Mr. Rodilla. Oh, who's that? Oh, Mr. Chandler. Discussion or question? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'm sorry, was Mr. Rodilla and Chandler, is that who you said?
Rodilla, Chandler.
Okay. Make sure I got it right. Okay, thank you. The next, just an update on the budget process. We did have a budget We did have a budget meeting today. Thank you for everyone for attending, and we are advertising and planning to pass the budget at the December 12th meeting. It is, all of the budget documents are on the website. They will be updated with the information that we updated today. And then, so the next two meetings that we have, November 26th at 6 PM and December 12th at 6 PM are the last two budget workshops for the year. No questions there. Moving on to the garbage and recycling update. We are actively working on the routes for them. There are going to be 4 days. So it is going to go from Tuesday to Friday for collection. We have the list of streets for each day. We're working on, and they are as well, getting a map. And we, thankfully, over the last 2 years, Charisma has taken a lot of time. Charisma and Catherine have both taken a lot of time in documenting all the misses that we've had over the last 2 years. We have a list of all of them, so we know where the problems are. We know where the difficulties, and usually it's like to the end of a street or someone has an alley pickup, but nobody else in the street has an alley pickup. We have all those lists, so hopefully we're gonna, when we implement this, it'll go as smoothly as possible. There will be, there's gonna be a flyer in the Jordan tax bill at the end of the year so that everybody will have the updated dates. There's also information in the newsletter that will be going out shortly, but we will also be putting out more information as we get it so that everybody has it. We hopefully, everybody, please be patient for the first month or two. There are going to be hiccups. There's no question. So please call us as soon as, or call them. Actually, you're going to call them first. And they are local operators. They are right in Beaver County. So you'll talk to a real person. So that'll be a nice change from calling Texas or wherever else you called when you talked to Waste Management. So we're looking forward to that. And anything that you can help us with, communicate with us as often and as you can, so that we know what the issues are and we can rectify them as quickly as we can. Any questions on that? Okay. The next thing is, we have an agreement with PennDOT to do snow removal on the state routes that exist. It's 60 and then Steuben. And they've sent us the 5-year proposed agreement. The amounts are listed there. So I would like a motion to approve, and these are what they're paying us to do this snow removal, because the borough does the snow removal. Motion to approve resolution 2024-13 to sign a 5-year snow removal contract with PennDOT for the portions of Steuben, Crafton Boulevard, and Dinsmore Avenue that are state routes.
Okay. All right, Ms. Mollenbacher, Mr. Rodilla, seconds. Any questions or discussion?
How much do they currently pay us, or this year did they?
I think it was 80. It was like 8,800. I don't have the number in front of me, but
Okay,
it was,
but basically continuing to
yeah, it's
go
a
up
re-
according.
yeah.
And it's paid regardless if we actually.
Have to do any snow? Yep. If there's no snow, we still get $9,000 because, yep.
Any questions? Any more? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Okay. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great. We'll go to our standing committee reports, finance administration, sustainability. Ms. Perry.
Okay, as we know, we've been meeting a lot on the budget, and we will have one more meeting to update things and cross some Ts and dot some Is before our next meeting. And then I have one issue for appointing the auditor. So per the borough's code, the council needs to annually appoint by the end of the year an independent auditor to make an independent examination of the account records of the borough for the fiscal year that is ending. So I am looking for a motion to adopt resolution 2024-12 to appoint Mayor Dussel as the Crafton Borough Independent Auditor for fiscal year 2024 to conduct the annual financial audit for the Borough of Crafton at a cost not to exceed $19,000.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Ho, Mr. Rodilla, second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Okay, the next one is certain budget resolution reviews. So our millage rates, our fee schedules, and our wage rates. We have to advertise. Well, so it's.
Oh, no, for resolutions, no, these are just resolutions. We do not have to advertise. So I can give you a quick update.
Okay,
For the millage rates, as you know, the budget is balanced.
Right.
And so there's no millage change, other than we are changing the road tax. So there's it'll still be an 8.59 flat tax
Right.
or 8.59 real estate tax. We are just shifting it all to the general budget for 1 year to deal with the C20 projects. For the fee schedule, I just have it on the drive so you can look at the fee schedule. We have not yet assessed it. There are several changes that we are likely to make. There were, I think, pool lessons were going to be increased, and a few other things. We also are, if we're changing something with the rental inspection ordinance, we might be changing the amounts there as well. So we do have we're gonna present updates at the next council meeting with them.
right,
I'll
so we'll
provide
be
everybody.
discussing these
Yep.
at the finance committee.
Yep.
Before we come to council next time, and the same thing with the wage rates.
Correct.
Thank you. All right. So the final thing for us is that we need to have an advertisement, an opportunity for public inspection of the 2025 budget and all of the related resolutions to be voted on at the December 12th council meeting. So I'm looking for a motion to advertise and make available for public inspection the 2025 proposed general, road, sewer, and capital fund budgets for adoption at the December 12th, 2024 council meeting.
So
All right, Ms. Ballenbacher, Ms. Polkownik, seconds.
This is Kirsten.
Oh,
Second.
Ms. Comptello, second. Any discussion, questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
All right. Infrastructure and land use, Ms. Costello.
Okay, the Linwood and Noble Parks. We actually didn't have a lot of time to discuss this at the infrastructure meeting after the hefty agenda we had elsewhere, but we did touch on some updates. We've had some considerations of this over the past few months. So we did get a grant a few years ago. This is something that came out of the Parks Master Site Development Plan. Started in 2021, right? I believe.
Yeah,
It was
I think
before your
so.
time. It was
Yeah,
before I was on council. I think it was 2021. 2022 was adopted. One of the ideas that came out of that were some upgrades to Linwood and Noble Parks that were explored and had backing from the community throughout that process. We got a grant for $250,000 from DCNR to make some of those upgrades and improvements to Linwood and Noble Parks. It came with a 50% match, which we have had budgeted. We've had the $250,000 in our budget, $250,000 in our budget. Since 2022, we've been anticipating this in the future budget. So we do have the funds put aside. That being said, we were hoping that we would get additional grant money, and we did not. So we were hoping to get another grant and to not have to pay that match ourselves. We did not get another grant. We still have the $250,000, the original $250,000 grant from DCNR. We have until 2026 to spend that.
But
I think so.
can I interject? We don't actually have
We
the
have been
money.
Yeah.
awarded
Yes.
Thank
the
you.
ability to get the money. We don't actually get grant funding until after we do the project or something like this
90% of the time.
for this.
Yeah.
So the other update we had a few months ago that brought this back into consideration is that we heard from DCNR that they were potentially changing the terms of the grant and wanted us to spend that money on only one of those two parks. We have pushed back and we have gotten that clarified. We can continue to use the funds to make upgrades to both parks, which was our initial intent. So with that being said, we have a plan that was started a few years ago that was communicated to the community. Those two parks were assessed during that process. There was support for updates to both of them. They both need some accessibility improvements, some safety improvements, some usability improvements. There were some ideas put forward for Noble Park specifically to make it more usable and more of a gateway to the community. All of that is recapped in that plan, which is still posted on our website. There was a community process at that time. There was a survey that was put out. There was an open house. And given that we have the $250,000 grant, we have the match money in our budget, and we have this as something that has been, told and promised to the community for the past few years. We've not discussed making any changes. That being said, that's really all about the amount of time we had to discuss this
I think
in the last infrastructure meeting. I think the next steps were for the engineer to proceed with doing some more advanced design work, which he has the capability to do in-house, to move forward with what can be done to get that to a construction point.
And I think we also talked about the ability to maybe make some changes that were less than the 250,000 match, which were so that we're only doing 100,000 and potentially just a match of 100 versus the full 250.
Yeah, I think the
So it was
suggested-
100% match, not a 50% match.
Right.
We
It's
have to
it's
match
called-
100% of the grant, but the grant pays 50% of the project.
Yeah, it's called the 50% match. Yeah.
Okay.
So if we spend, what we applied for with this DCNR grant was a $500,000 project for upgrades to the two parks, and they gave us $250,000. They awarded us the ability to tap into $250,000 in grant funding once we do the project. which comes with a requirement that we match 50% of the project. If we spend less than $500,000, if we do a smaller project, they will still only match up to, we can only apply, we can only get grant funding to cover 50% of whatever we spend.
Yeah, and one thing I think we stated with Larry's work is we're gonna try to do a good, better, best kind of scenario where what are the options if we only spend 100,000? What are the options if we spend 175? What are the options if we spend 250? That kind of thing. So like, what do the actual choices mean from a physical? Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know if I covered that well enough. I know this one's been a bit in the air for the past few months as we weren't sure what the answer would be from DCNR, but the answer is that we can continue to proceed exactly as we had initially planned. And so we're not ready to go to bid or make any decisions of that sort yet, but we have an engineer in-house who can take it to the next level and bring us some more advanced designs to then consider how we want to proceed. Any questions? That's all for my committee.
Planning Commission, Mr. Vadella.
All right, so Jim kind of already reviewed this, but our next meeting is November 19th at 6:30, right here in the council chambers. Thank you.
Communication and Recreation, Ms. Wallenbacher.
We still have some upcoming events coming to end out or to roll out the end of 2024. We have our celebration of lights on Saturday, December 7th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in Crafton Park. There'll be music all night. We'll start with an a cappella group by the name of Joyful Noise. And after that, the rest of the evening, Nightlife DJ will be playing some Christmas holiday favorites. You can meet and get your picture taken with Santa and Mrs. Claus, as well as the Snow Princess. The Snow Princess will also be doing a special performance for the kids. We'll also have a pirate walking around handing out some balloon swords for the kiddos. We'll also have some crafts, some games, and the Hot Buns food truck will be handing out some nice toasty delights. So there's more to come, so come join us. The Rec Board, in partnership with Crafton Heritage, is presenting their annual holiday house tour. That's going to be Sunday, December 15th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. There are a total of 9 stops on the tour. Tickets are pre-sale right now for $20 a ticket. You can get those at the library, Blue Snail, the Fig Tree Coffee House, Crafton Administrative Offices, as well as online at the Borough website. The day of the tour, if you decide you want to come, the tickets go to $25 and you can only purchase them at the library, which is kind of the headquarters for where you pick up your information for the tour itself. They do still need docents, which are the people who go to the houses. You go and kind of help herd the masses, for lack of better terminology. So if you'd like to be one of those people who herds the masses, please join us. Go to the website, Crafton's website, and let the Rec Board know that you're interested. It doesn't have to be all day. It can be just a couple hours here and there. And the Rec Board are already fast. They're already starting all of their planning for 2025. They've got some changes coming up. They've got some, standards they're going to keep. But as always, they're always looking for volunteers. So even if you just know you want to volunteer, but you don't necessarily know for what or when, just please send them an email, let them know that you're interested. And as the events come up, they'll reach out to you, let you know what they need and whether or not you can do it. So just because you say you want to volunteer doesn't mean we're, solidifying you in for every event the entire year through. Any little bit helps. So again, just go to the website and let them know that you are interested. Aside from that, we have Santa coming by fire truck on Saturday, December 21st. He'll start at 9 o'clock and go through the neighborhood, wailing the siren and getting all the kids excited for Christmas. Our newsletter is now done and I believe ready for shipping. I believe it's going to go out next week. So you should start seeing it in your mailboxes, I think by the end of next week, maybe early fall.
Probably
Probably
Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, so look for it the week of Thanksgiving. And that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, commission vacancy, Ms. Patownick.
All right, thank you. Just have a couple moves here for the Civil Service Commission. Mercedes McCormick Carl is currently on the Civil Service Commission in an alternate role. She threw her hat in the ring and decision was made to ask for a motion this evening. A motion to appoint Mercedes McCormick Carl to the Civil Service Commission for an existing term that is set to expire on July 1st, 2026.
So moved.
Mr. Chandler,
Second.
all right, Ms. Compatello, any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. So we do have a couple upcoming positions. Zoning Hearing Board will have 2 openings set to expire at the end of the year. 1 alternate seat on Zoning Hearing Board as well, end of the year. And with Mercedes moving from that alternate role into the full-time, we will have a alternate now available on the Civil Service Commission. So all of those Zoning Hearing Board is already posted, Civil Service will be posted in our normal communication channels. And then we will have a couple more, I know, coming towards the end of the year. So as always, just encouraging everybody, if you want to be on a commission or a committee or a board, feel free to look at the website and please apply. So there you have it. Oh, wait, I'm like, what is this community engagement? That's me. Update on the community engagement, while back, it was brought up, interest in the community having, this community engagement committee. Just letting everyone know, I did reach out to was it Nicole, I believe her name was Nicole, via email. I have not heard back, just so everyone is aware. We did reach out, I have not, and she was gonna provide, like a best practices and overview on what that committee would look like. So just still waiting to receive that information.
Good, thank you. Council of Government, Ms. Mollenbacher.
There haven't been any meetings since our last council meeting. So the only announcement there is the next COG meeting is next Thursday, November 21st at 6:30 in Green Tree. I'm taking partners.
I'll come to that one.
All right. Community announcements. So our next council meeting is a different date. It is Tuesday, November 26th at 7 with the budget workshop at 6. Celebration of Lights, as Ms. Mollenbacher went through, is December 7th, 6 to 8 in Crafton Park. You can see the details that are on the agenda. The holiday house tour is December 15th, 1 to 6. I don't believe there's a Steeler game at that time, that Sunday. So everybody can attend and not worry about the Steelers playing. Santa comes on a fire truck Saturday, December 21st at 9. That is confirmed, correct?
I have.
Yeah,
no
it's
idea.
confirmed.
Oh, it is,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
good, we're
yep.
confirmed. Okay, Santa, Mrs. Claus and the fire department will work their way through the streets with the siren and then visit Thornburg and Roslyn Farms. Great. Any other announcements from council? Okay, public comment. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson, represent them before council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. The solicitor is our assigned timekeeper. Please state your name and physical address for the record. We don't have anybody signed in. If there's anybody, yeah, you can come on up. You have to come up. Yeah, you have to come.
I mean, it's not hugely important, but so that's.
Your name and address.
Jerry Stewart, 166 Noble Avenue. In regards to the Green Space Initiative, just a comment and a wish. Crafton Boulevard has foxtail planted in the bump outs. They're not healthy for dogs. They could create issues. So when he spoke of planting plants, hopefully they'll be maybe native plants and not fox.
Okay. They are all native.
Yeah, I believe they are proposed to be native plants.
Fox plants could create a problem, an issue.
Okay, they do.
So there's barbs,
Yeah.
they become embedded in paws, their noses, and
Okay.
Okay,
small lands.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
that's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Okay. Mhm. All right, anybody else? Oh, Greg?
I have Greg Wozniak, 1774 Avenue. I have about 4 real quick things. The trail study, will notifications be going out, that, I signed up, but I didn't get notification back that I was actually, that I signed up. Like typically we get a thing that says that we know you signed up and what's going on. So I don't know if that's going to continue. Valves and Pam's hand, I meant, well.
Let's,
Anyway,
yeah,
that's-
Yeah.
The GSI, I was just wondering, do we do a life cycle cost on these projects? If the GSI is going to have a continual maintenance, like the detention ponds do, is there a life cycle cost initiative, study that's done on these projects? And that might help make a decision there. The other thing is, let's see, for the Noble and Linwood Parks, I know Larry's gonna do the initial in-house engineering on those parks, but I was just wondering if there is if we go to outside engineering, do we have a cap on engineering expenses? As far as how much of that budget money is gonna go to engineering before we start breaking ground. And then, I hate to mention this, but, during the Clearview, brickwork, heavy trucks and equipment were up and down Borough Avenue again. I don't know why this keeps happening. And, I have a question about the Borough, when they take service shift or whatever, does that property become Borough property? It doesn't become a Borough building. Okay, so, I just want to ask that because I know in the zoning code, under section 22511, it seems like the boroughs exempt from zoning regulations would be buildings owned by the borough. So I had asked Jim and Mike to look into that. And ask the solicitor about that clause in the zoning.
Right.
And I was just wondering, I just was wondering.
Thank you. So I have, the first time was the trail study. Did we get his application for?
Yep.
For there?
Yeah,
Do
we
have-
did not,
okay.
we didn't have it automatically respond to people, but we can do that in the future.
The GSI, this is recognition, which is a really good point of the life cycle costs of the maintenance of the GSIs. This would be the plants and the things that would be inside of there, the continual maintenance. Noble and Linwood Park, is there a cap on the engineering expenses for those?
No, I mean, there's not, if Larry does, usually the most significant portion of the cost of engineering typically on a project like that is the design cost, which Larry would do, but for site drawings and whatnot, we'll still need Gateway to do some of the work. But there's no cap, there's no specific cap on it.
If I can add a question to that. While you're saying there's no cap now, once we get to that point and decide on good, better, best, then there'll be a work order,
Yeah.
which will have costs on it.
Yeah, we'll have a work off that we'll
And-
sign. Yep.
Exactly. So the goal will be to minimize the engineering costs. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
And it was already in, I believe, the design completed for that project. So it's taking that design and then seeing what can be done at what cost.
Right, and those concepts are included in the parks, master site parks development plan that's posted on the borough's website. And a lot of them are, fairly simple things like accessible parking, improvements and cleanup to stairs at Linwood, for example, lighting, I believe, was included, particularly for Linwood. So some of those things are fairly obvious. But yeah, we haven't yet gone to the next step. And once Larry does develop more drawings to the next step and council can review and decide what we're actually proceeding with, at that point, we would be actually discussing cost.
And the trucks, taking note again of the trucks going on the brick streets and the conservatorship, does it become borough property?
For the Brick Street, I actually went up when you called Linda. Those were Brick Street repair companies. And those trucks, were not the 5-ton trucks. They were smaller. They were dualies in the back, but they were not the larger trucks, and they drive those specifically because of that. So those weren't over 5-ton trucks. And I actually went up and spoke with them, so it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, thank you for calling us, but that time was not, I don't think it was an above weight truck. I mean, they do brick street work. The other, in fact, that's what they were doing at the time when they were up there.
The conservatorship.
And then for the conservatorship, a conservatorship is, you never take ownership. Basically, you are, acting as the conservator for that building until it's sold. It is still under the ownership of the person who, owns the building initially. Whether they exist or they're passed away or whatnot doesn't matter. The only ability we have is to fix up the property and then we have to sell it. And that's the rule. As far as the 22511, I'm sorry, I don't recall looking into that, so I'll have to go back and look into that. As far as that specific item in code.
Very good. All right, anybody else? All right. Anybody online, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands raised. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.